another office hours. As always, my name is Matthew. We have Justin, Todd, and Keith on with us today. Thanks for joining. Just to keep things status quo, we're going to be talking about our Juice Technologies add-ons. So if anyone has any questions about those add-ons, please feel free to jump in and ask those questions. We really want to make sure we hit upon anyone's questions. That's priority number one. If you want to participate and you see that there's someone else going, if you could just please raise your hand with the reactions, that'd be great. And we'll try to keep this to about 5 to 7 to 10 minutes, depending on the question. And you guys will all receive a copy, as well as, we do have a survey at the end. So if you could stay till the end and, help us get feedback going forward, that'd be great. And one last thing before we talk about the topic, which today's topic is adding your own mail server within the Juice Cloud. But one last thing before we do that is on our help site, we actually have all the previous recordings shown. Justin's done a great job at time stamping them. So if we look at last week's, for example, we have all the different timestamps of the topics that we spoke about. It's a really great way to find what you're looking for. So if you guys are interested in learning about what we talked about in previous recordings, you can find them all on our help site, which I can make sure to have Justin send a link in so you guys can all find it. But without going too far into things, I want to open it up to the room, kind of open forum. Does anyone have any questions that they're dying to ask? Now is the time. And, if you are not really the type of person that wants to come up and share your screen or talk out loud on the Zoom meeting, you could always feel free to message myself or Justin with your question. If not, we do have 3 popular sport questions from this week that we will get to at some point. All right, Annette, yes, please. You can either join video or speak, however you'd like to ask.
Hello.
There it is.
I have a question about the DocuSign.
Okay.
So I've got one that's got multiple pages, and I've got it where the first name, last name, date of birth, certain fields are populating throughout the app based on what they put in on the first option. And I was wondering if there's a way to make the subsequent fields read only so they can't have one value in one field and another value in another field.
That is a good question. So, sorry, my speaker might be a little off, but based off what you just said, you want to have certain recipient tags be read only?
Right. So if I've got first name like 8 times throughout the document, because it's like an application, I-9, things like that. So the first name is repeated throughout the document. And if they type it in the first one, it populates all the ones after that. So is there any way to make the ones that are pre-populated read only so they can't accidentally, when they're tabbing through, type something wrong in there where it's already pre-populated?
So I believe, yes, and we do have Manal as a lifeline on this call as well.
Let's call out to our lifeline Manal.
There's no way to do that. That's what Manal said to everyone.
Okay, that's what I was afraid the answer was going to be, but I had to ask.
Well, what I will say is, and this is more of a question, do you have on the recipient tag label something separate? Like, are they all labeled the same? Because it seems like almost as if it's taking that down the value because it has the same tab label.
Yes, the same tab label so that it'll pre-populate everything, and then the name is just different for each one. So it's like app first name, I-9 first name, but then the tag label is just first name so that it'll populate everything.
Okay.
But they have the potential when they're tabbing through to type something like Carolyn in one field and Annette in another in the other one. So we were just trying to make it dummy proof.
That's understandable. What about the locked field, Manal? When set the true, the signer cannot change the data of the custom tab.
Because she has the tag labels the same, the locked property would not work in this case because they are all considered as one tag.
Yep.
So if the lock is on, it will be locked. It will lock all the tags.
Gotcha.
Got it.
Matthew's questioning our lifeline.
I'm not questioning Manal. No one put that down on my. Okay. All right.
Well, thank you.
That was a great question. I would really appreciate you participating. All right. Well, that was a great one. I see a hand raised. Jennifer, absolutely. Would you like to come on and speak?
Sure. My question is about Exact Forms Plus. I'm a pretty new user with it, but I have a form that I've set up in Word that is working pretty well. And I have a couple of document subtables that are on that, and those are working the way I intended. But my question has to do with kind of like a table heading. I have a workaround that I can do in Quickbase, but I'm hoping there might be a more elegant solution. I would like to have almost like a table header. I've got the tables I'm using, one is parts used and one is parts needed. And so I would like to have that be kind of like a table header above my table. I can type it directly in my document, but of course then it still prints even if I don't have any records to display, which very often I will not. And as far as I can tell, there's not any way in Exact Forms Plus to specify kind of like an overall table header for those document subtables. Is that correct?
No, you should be able to, if you're in your configurator, if you go to the last tab of the configurator, which actually, let me.
I was going to say, Keith, are you pulling that up or?
Yeah, let me quickly show my screen here.
Okay, good. I was hoping I just missed it. I'm going to pull mine up at the same time.
So, I don't know if I have any config. I don't have any subtables in this one. Let me find another one. Where I might have some subtables. All right. So I have subtables in here. I'm actually pulling up a beta version of our configurator because we're going to release some new changes, and they happen to be about controlling the header a little bit more. So this is kind of like a sneak peek to something we're about to release.
Good question then, Jennifer.
So if you're in the configurator and you go to the subtable formatting options, if you have display column headers checked, then the field labels will appear unless you overrode them here with the on your subtable field. So if I didn't want it to say quantity, if I wanted it to, because my field name is quantity, but if I wanted it to say quantity like this, then that's what I would do. And when I generated the document, it should show the word quantity when I'm done. Again, if you, I'm sorry, I got to save my changes. If you don't have this checked, then column headers will not appear. But if you have it checked, column headers should appear.
Okay, well, actually, it's not really the column headers that I'm asking about. I do want my column headers to show, but I also would like to have a header that applies to the entire table, not just to one column, but that says that's what this table is.
Yeah, Keith, that sounds like something where we would have to have a field in Quickbase, something like a formula-rich text field, or and then have another display field to show whether or not if there's data in the related table to display that field. If not, don't display that field.
And that was kind of what my workaround was. Now, I was just going to have that be a formula field that if there were any related records, it would populate it with my table header, and otherwise it would leave it blank. and then just add that field onto my form. Is that kind of what you're talking about?
That is what I'm alluding to.
Okay.
There might be a more elegant solution, like you said, but that's kind of how
Okay.
my first thought would go to that.
Okay. Well, that's what I was thinking that I would do, but I just wanted to be sure that I wasn't missing something in the configurator that would do that for me.
Yeah, there's nothing I could think of that would do that. The only other thing, I'm not sure if you, when you don't have any message to appear, like if you have no records in your document subtable, this message details not found on the document templates table. This you can control to say no records found, or you can maybe put anything you want in there. And if there are no records found in the subtable, it will display that message, but you don't really have the ability to control fonts and, you know, well, whatever you put in the STRID in the table, it should use that font settings, but it's not really going to give you the table header for when you do have data.
Yeah, I was going to say that kind of works, except I want just the opposite. I want a message if records are found.
If
So,
records are found, yeah. The only way you're
Okay.
going to do that is through like a formula text field like we spoke.
okay, well, then I will go ahead and I will proceed with that as my solution.
Good.
Thank you.
Thanks for the question.
That is a good question. All right. 2 great questions in a row. Appreciate that. Anyone else? Questions? Yep, Chris, great.
All right. First off, I'm new to the added office hours, so I appreciate you guys doing this. I think I'm driving Keith insane by emailing him every 30 minutes, I feel like. But so this one I feel as though it's a little for you guys, hopefully basic, but I have a subtable that has 3 individual pictures on it, and each picture I can get into my, this is exact form plus, by the way, it can render into my Word table or document. But what I was hoping to do, because the subtables align horizontally, that is, I'd have picture 1, and then to the right would be picture 2, and then to the right of that would be picture 3. I wanted them to go vertical. So I was hoping to put all 3 pictures into a rich text format field and then have them stacked on top of one another. I went to the online help, and you have a nice article there regarding it, but it's either throwing me a span, you need a properly formatted HTML, or I'm getting, it'll render, but it's like an X. It's just the image is just an X on the Word document. I'm wondering how I should begin my troubleshooting on that.
Well, one thing I think you need to maybe take a look at is if you're including width and height inside of the div tag, like so you're saying image source and you're giving it your link to your href, whatever. If you're using height and width, you got to remove those. We don't, in our image source properties, the properties of the image source tag in HTML, everybody includes the width and height in different ways and in different formats, maybe height first, width second. So we can't really handle that inside of Exact Forms Plus. So we asked you not to use width and height, because what we do is we size everything based on the size of the cell itself, meaning the column. If you say a column is 50 pixels, we size the images based on that.
Okay.
So I know you might have a field that you're using to display properly inside of Quickbase, and that works nice, but we kind of ask you to use another field without the width and heights, and use that one if you're going to put that in Exact Forms Plus.
So the width then should be created on the configurator, that column that we were just looking at.
Yeah, exactly.
Ago.
One that says the width of the column itself.
Okay.
So if you size it at 100, it's really like 100 pixels. 72 pixels is about an inch. So
Okay.
100 will be a little bit more than an inch. But you can play around with that and see if that works. But you have to treat it as an image. Like, so if we're going to display images, we want you to tell us in the configurator that you want to display it as an image.
Okay.
Yeah, because I think if you have it as rich text or as HTML, I'm not sure if it's gonna be able to handle the images properly.
I think that's what I'm running into with the rich text, because I did remove the height and width from the tag, but then it would render that image that looked like a white square with a red X on it. So
Yeah.
I
'cause
felt like it
can't-
was getting there, but it wasn't. It was broken somehow.
Yeah, it's getting like a not found or something on it. It's not been able to render the image, so. I'm not sure if what you're trying to do is gonna work if you're trying to stack 3 on top of each other.
Okay. Okay.
I'd have to
'Cause
try that
maybe-
on my own and to see if that, I'll try that on my own after the session, just to see if there's a way to do that. I know there's some advanced Exact Fonts Plus users here. I see Laura Thacker there. I'm not sure if she's ever done something like that. But I'll give it a shot and I can respond back and let you know if there's a way to do that.
Okay. Appreciate it.
Good question. Thank you. Anyone else excited to ask a question? I'm gonna go with no then. And again, feel free to interrupt me if you have a question that comes up. Please feel free to jump in and participate, because that's really what this is for. The tips and the support questions are also just kind of bonus information that we have for you. So I think the best thing to do right now would be to go into adding your own mail server with Courier. And that's something that we get frequent questions on. So we thought this would be a good topic to spotlight. Not sure how many of you guys have Courier here, but this would be great for future reference. So right now I'm sharing my cloud account. As you can see, it's telling us this is actually associated to my builder account. And I have Courier here that's on trial. Like many of you, when you click into the tile, you may get to the screen. If you get to the screen by error, and I did this on purpose this time, just click on configurations. We're fixing that. Secondly, you have a couple options on the side here, as well as a couple options on the top. They match. The first thing you're going to want to do when creating Courier, no matter what, is to go into data connections. And as you can see here, I have no data connection. So to create a data connection, you're just going to select Quickbase from the application. It's going to bring up your account URL, and it's going to ask you, do you have a Quickbase user token? For me and for all of you, the answer should be yes. And it's going to ask for you to add the user token. So I'm logged into my builder account over here. For those of you who don't know, you can get your user token by saying hi, your name, my preferences, about halfway down the screen, manage my user tokens. And I have a bunch of bogus ones here assigned to this one app. I'm going to copy it and bring it over here and paste it in. If you see a space there, that's a good catch. Delete that. You're going to want to make sure it's just the user token across. And the connection name, test connection, something just for, to relate it for you. Once you have that connect, you'll have the data connection going forward. And then you could just click back into Courier from there. Now, when you want to add a mail server, obviously we have clients with a bunch of different options. For us, we use Office 365. So that's what I'm going to be showing today. But Justin, if you wouldn't mind, I know I sent you a couple links, especially the ones regarding Gmail. Something I wanted to touch upon, and Justin, if maybe you could either share the link or maybe steal the share.
I'll toss the links in the chat for anyone who wants to
Yeah,
take a look.
I think I might pull one of them up, because especially the Gmail one is important to know. For Gmail, we actually are required to use app password. So when I click this create mail server, you're going to see the options we need here. One of those being password. For us to connect to your mail server, we do need a password. But with Google, most recently, this is the other one with Gmail, actually, Justin. For this one, you actually see there's a notice here, less secure apps with your Google account. So starting May 30th, 2022, Google no longer supports third-party apps and devices when signing into your account. Technically, that is us. So this did affect us. So if you're trying to log in or connect to your mail server with a Gmail mail server, you do need to create an app password. Like Justin just did, he sent in the link, so you guys can all take a look for yourself. This all will be part of the help site. With signing in with the app password, it's going to be asking you to put on two-factor authentication. Many of us have already done this for different apps along the way, different social medias. It's just being able to have a phone call or a text message with a code sent back to you. That might be a security change for your Gmail account, but that is required to sign in with app passwords. And that will create a cryptic password for us to use, almost similar to a user token. And that is the only way to do Gmail. There's other options, such as Proofpoint, that also require this. And I think I also sent a link to Justin for Proofpoint. Outlook and Office 365 have not required this yet, but as you know, organizations try to continue to buff up their security, I'm sure they will require app passwords as well in the near future. And there's the Proofpoint one. Thank you, Justin. And you know, these are all from their help sites. You know, we actually can't necessarily say we know every single company's security settings. So this might be something where you have to get your IT team involved in. Now, to point to something that we have as an available option that we don't necessarily highlight as much as we should, we can also give you a semi-branded email account that you can send from, which is a step up from notify at Quickbase, you know, mail.com. I believe that's what it is. We can do actually your company name at quickbasemail.com, and that gives you more control. You can actually get statistics from the mail, which we cannot do with the mail server, and it's easier than necessarily connecting straight to your mail server like this if you're not an IT expert or your company, you know, has specific security settings that you'd like. So that's an option, and I actually don't have any configurations to show that on. So let me add a new one quick, just so I can show you where you would go to do that. Remember, I'm just filling in quick data for you guys just to get to the next step. So the option I just spoke about would be from the from email. Instead of use your own mail server, we'd be using a specific email address. And we would provide you that email address. You would just have to reach out to us and say that you're interested in getting the semi-branded email address, and we'd provide that to you. So it's a much easier option than adding the mail server if, again, you're not that IT expert. But if you do have your own mail server, you would select that option and then select the mail server here, which we will do right now. So when I go to create our mail server, we do need SMTP settings. So for us, it's smtp.office365.com. Server display name, support. Username is support at Tech. I'm not going to share our password with you guys. For us, the port is 587. I believe the port's going to be 587 for most SMTP configurations. We do have encryption method on. And the mail server, we're going to just do use the mail server user email address for us. But we do have other options where if you wanted to have it come from a specific field, like if you have several different salespeople that you want to have emails sent from and they want to send out quotes or invoices through there, you can select which user sent it to actually display as that's who sent the email. If that's something you're interested in, we'd be happy to discuss that further. Once you have all of your settings in here, you're just going to hit test mail server settings, and I'm going to put in my email address to send the sample email to. And when you press test, you should get a green success message. Now, hypothetically, if I were to do, 25 is my port and I hit test, oh, I guess that was successful too. I did try to use a valid one. Let's do something like XYZ. You do get an error message here if something's incorrect. So if you're getting these red error messages, and if you've tried in the past and the red error message came up on the bottom, this is newer, more precise way of identifying the error and at least letting it stay on your screen so you can read it for longer. And then just as, just proof of concept, I did get that test email. This email is being sent using your mail server credentials that you've entered in the Juice Cloud. That's just for continuity, knowing that you did receive that email and that it is working. And that is the mail server. Yeah, so doesn't need to take up too much time. That is adding your mail server. Does anyone have any questions? Oh, and one thing is you do have to hit save. As with anything on the computer, please hit save because you see that it is gone right now because I did not hit save. Seems like that went well for everyone. I believe that.
Did you save that mail server for yourself?
No, I didn't. That's what I was saying is please make sure you hit save because I did not save that actually.
It's all right. You don't have to. I just.
Yeah. Yep. But that is an important point. Obviously, you must save it to have it display there. So we just went over creating a data connection, creating a mail server, and step number 3 would be adding a Courier configuration. With the power of those 3 steps, you are able to actually start using Courier without getting us involved at all. Of course, we're here if you need us. Jennifer, yes.
I noticed that when you went to that Google page that was shared, and I didn't see what you clicked on, but you showed about, yes, this right here. And I noticed it says on there that it doesn't apply to Google Workspace at this point in time.
Mhm.
We are on Google Workspace. Do you know, is there a different document as far as doing setup if you're on Google Workspace as opposed to just a Gmail account?
Based off of my experience, it's been just the settings within the Google Workspace that has, I guess, stopped the process. You do have to have SMTP settings allowed, and as well as third-party connections allowed. I wouldn't be able to get into the specifics because everyone's mail server is a little bit different. That's why we do say sometimes IT does need to get involved. But at this time, I believe you can use an admin's account with a password generated by you, not an app password, which is what this is about.
Okay. I'll have to decide if I'm going to dig into that or not, but thank you.
Yep. And like I said as well, and I may have breezed over it, we do have 2 other options. We have our standard email address, which we always recommend when testing using, which is qbcourier@quickbasemail.com. Just for the purpose of seeing the value, when you add a new Courier configuration, and I'll just go back to the last one actually, instead of trying to do this from the top, you can use this QB Courier email address in order to get started. Of course, it's not as valuable as having your own mail server or having the semi-branded account, but it does allow emails to be sent out. So this could help you just kind of test how you're sending it, testing your email message itself, viewing it on your regular mail server. So when you get sent the email, it's still going to go to Gmail, of course. So that's just one recommendation.
Well, and truthfully, I think looking at what our old system was doing, the semi-branded option may actually be a step up from what we were doing without having to get into the mail server. So I'll just have to check with management and see what route they want to go.
Yep. Yeah.
That's why we kind of offered that because we were getting, sometimes we do run into some issues with like, getting security clearance from IT to allow us to connect to the mail server to send out emails. So, and this was always our first option, was to use our QB Courier at quickbasetools.com, because then you don't have to set up any mail server. You just choose that from the dropdown. The other option, the semi-branded one, which would be like, say, your email address at quickbaseemail.com. Same thing. We don't have to set up the email server. We just have to set up one thing on our side to do that. But you don't have to worry about having the SMTP information, the port information, passwords, and so on. We just set that account up for you, and then you can select it from the drop down here, and then you can move forward.
And I'm sorry, what was after the at on that? You said it's at Quickbase email.
Yeah, quickbaseemail.com.
Okay. And are there any additional charges to have a semi-branded account?
No, we want to make it easier to use this, so we're not charging anything additional for that.
All right, thank you.
Thanks for asking a question. Appreciate it. Yep, so that's great. And that shed a little bit more details on the semi-branded option. Which, for those of you who might have had Courier in the past, that is a semi-new option as well. So if you weren't aware of that, that is why. So that's everything I have on Courier specifically. I'll open it up again. Jennifer, appreciate you asking questions, but does anyone else have any questions? Okay, seems like no. So we do have 2 more questions that kind of revolve around Courier as well, just because we wanted to keep things consistent. And one of those are actually the error messages from within Courier. So sometimes clients ask, well, I sent an email. Oh, Annette, pause. Annette, you first. Just wanted to stop there because we'd rather take questions than speak to you. We'd rather speak with you. So Annette, you might be muted, but all right, well, Annette, if you figure out the microphone and you could talk or send a chat. Oh, I see chat. Having trouble unmuting. Let's see. Justin, any?
No, I was trying to ask her to unmute on my end. Annette, you could just ask it in the chat and then we can answer from there. It's no big deal.
Yes, technically yes, because you would not be sending out from Gmail. So Annette's question was, do you know if semi-branded emails get around the Gmail throttling the number of send requests? If you're sending from a Gmail currently, then yes, because it would be a different mail server. And Manal might have something different to say about that. But sending to Gmail, I don't know if it would make a difference.
Right. So our semi-branded email addresses are not Gmail addresses. So we're not using the Gmail servers to send.
It's actually interesting that Annette brought that up because that was one of the support questions that we were going to touch upon today. So maybe I'll jump to that first before I touch upon the message errors, which you might receive this error anyway. One question we had from client, and maybe Justin, do you have the questions up by chance so you can read it word for word, or if not?
I do have the
Matthew,
questions.
okay.
Yes, Manal.
Yes, I just want to add one more thing to the branded email that later on we are planning to offer tracking on all these emails, and we are working towards it so you can see if your emails got delivered or rejected and what was the ratio and all these tracking. we are using a vendor that offers all these features, and we are working with them to offer it to our customers.
It's a good point. And that is definitely a pro for the semi-branded.
Yes, yes.
Hey, Manal, why don't you stay on, because Laura has a good question too. So Laura's asking if you're using the semi-branded and the end user ends up hitting apply, where does the email go?
The email will not go to, we have a feature so that we can add the reply to email address. So if we add a reply to email address, the emails will go to that email address. But
Right.
you won't be able to reply to the email address that we are giving it to you, the branded.
Right, so you want to make sure you have that set up as
Yes,
a reply to
yes.
on your email options, and then you should be good.
Mhm.
Thanks, Manal.
Yeah,
Good
that
question, Laura.
Yep, that would be right here under the reply to. You'd enter a specific email address so that it goes to your normal email address or an email address from a field on the record. And also, as long as we have, and Manal, this might be a question for you, but if we have an activity log, could we potentially pair mail parser in with that? Or if the reply to email address was the mail parser address?
Yes,
So that is one way to kind of close the loop. If wanted, you can have a table within your Quickbase account, which has email activities. So you can see all of the emails sent right now, because Courier is an outbound email. But we also have email parser, which is an emailing add-on for inbound emails. So they actually pair very nicely together. So if you were to do that, you can have kind of an ongoing, almost like mailbox within Quickbase of sent and received emails. So that's something that, I know I've set up in the past for something like support tickets. So it's very powerful. All right, so to digress back to the questions of the week, Justin, I believe you may have either a link or the question itself.
I believe I have the question itself. So someone this week did send in a ticket, and what it said was, I just received an error when going to send my email stating Courier is exceeding per run limit. Is there a possible workaround for its current 300 email per run limit?
So that is a good question, and also a common question. A lot of people would like to use Courier as an on-demand tool, similar to something like MailChimp comes to mind for me. So when you have the processing mode as on-demand, you notice that reports actually comes up here. So you can choose from the reports. And let's say you choose list all, because you don't have a report necessarily that you want to send from. That list all report can be massive, of course. We have a daily run limit defaulted to 300 emails per day. That's just because we don't want people throttling, as Laura mentioned, or I think someone mentioned, Annette, thank you. We don't want people necessarily throttling our servers, and you actually can also get your own mail server, I think blacklisted. I don't know if that's the correct terminology, but it can flag you as spam if you're sending out too many requests in too short of a period of time. So it could be harmful for your mail servers. So we set a default at 300 per day. Not always do people want to send out, reports of over 300. We can up that for you, but by default it is 300. We usually don't recommend upping it by too much, because again, we don't want to have any of our clients or ourselves flagged for spam. Keith, Manal, anything to add to that?
that is good.
Yeah, the only thing I would add is that, the whole purpose of Courier is not so much to be a mass marketing or bulk email service. It's more of a transactional based service. So, things happening in your Quickbase application that you need to deliver to customers or partners or vendors. That's what the real purpose of Courier is. So we'd rather you reserve those bulk sending options to a product like, Constant Contact, MailChimp, any one of those.
Yep. But not everyone, is necessarily aware or thinking, that same way. Annette had a good question. Is that 300 per day or 300 per batch? I believe it's 300 per day because we have a daily run limit.
Actually, no, there's good question. There's a per run limit, which we set at 300, I believe. And then there's a daily limit of 750. Those are the defaults.
Okay, so then I have those mixed up, Keith.
Yeah, that's fine. It's good to clear it up. Good question, Annette. But yes, it's 301 shots. So if you have one process running, we're not going to allow you to send more than 300 at a time. And we have a daily limit of 750. And again, this is to protect your usage limits with us again, because sometimes people will select the wrong report, or they'll select a report that somebody else went and changed the filter on. So that's another dangerous thing, is sometimes you might be using a report that's attached to this Courier configuration, and somebody else on your team might have changed the filter, and now instead of it filtering out 50 records, now it's filtering out 5,000 records. So it's more of a safeguard as well.
Thanks,
So
Keith.
we have Laura as well, waiting to ask a question. So Laura, you're up.
Yeah, I think it's easier if I talk about this question. So I use Courier every week to send out about 300 emails, and I send them in batches because sometimes there are errors. And so I'm using an on-demand configuration. And when the errors come in, it tells me how many, but it doesn't tell me which records have errored out. So when that happens, I get a copy of every email that goes out. So I have to go through my records in my table and match them to the records that I got emails on to identify the ones that failed, so I could re-trigger those ones specifically. So I don't have to run. I do them in batches of somewhere around 40 to 60, depending on whatever it is. And it would be really helpful if that error message could tell me the RIDs of the trigger records that failed.
Right.
Because it's painful when it goes wrong.
Incoming lifeline, Manal.
I know.
That's that's a very good feature that you have requested. But Courier allows you to use the date time field, right? So whenever we send out an email for a specific record, we update a date time field for that record. So if you create a report with a filter on, if the date time created is that specific date after this date or something, you
Then I
will
can filter on
automatically,
that.
yes, you will automatically see the records that are not being
Processed, right.
used. Yes,
You
failed.
see, sometimes you just need someone with common sense on the phone to reset your brain into logic. Okay. All right.
But
Well, that makes way more sense.
that's a very good recommendation. I think I'm going to look into it. I mean, it should not be that difficult for us to include the record IDs in the failures. That's a very good feature to have.
Thank you, Laura.
Thank you.
So speaking of, it's almost like you guys got this scripted. To be fair, those of you who are watching this recorded, it is not. That goes right into our next support question, which is actually great. And Justin, I will let you go forward and read it. But
Are you referring, I assume specifically, I'm going to read it and tell me if I'm reading the wrong one. Our Courier configuration isn't firing. We're trying to diagnose the error on our end. Where's the best place for us to start?
well, I just clicked on and as Keith referred it to me, and I think this is a great way to put it, there's 4 blue pancakes on the left side of the Courier configuration. And when you click on that, it gives you a little bit of details per day. Keep that in mind. So it's only per the day, but it tells you emails that were to be sent, which record was processed. This one was in trigger mode, so it's just record ID 50. And I purposely gave myself an error just for the purpose of showing this. We're also working on having this display a little better, but right now, if you hover over the processing details in the cloud from that configuration activities, you'll see that there's actually the error message below. You don't have to click, just hover. And it says the following emails were missing information from the C list. And that's company name was the field itself. That's actually something else that we've recently also made an update to, which will be released sometime, I believe, next week, which is you can add the C list by hand right from within the email message part of the Courier configurator. But this is a common message that people get all the time. So I just wanted to include this as well as where to go to check, because then you could at least see, okay, I'm missing the company name field. I need to make sure I have that to my C list. One way to work on fixing that is if you were to go into that message. And again, this is just a sample Courier configuration. I put it right at the top here. One thing you can do is delete it. You'll actually see how that C list is ready on here. So the feature is already out. Here's that C list. And when you go in, and if I want to put client company back in, drag and drop, you actually see that 7 gets added there to that C list. So now if I were to run it again, there would likely be no error. So if I update next, let this load for a second, and then hit test configuration, I should not get that same error. As a note too, we always have the success message go out. The error messages go to that Courier configuration section. Just as a note, I did get that email. It gives you some information on the top when running a test. No emails were sent to clients, which is nice to see. One email message will be sent when you have it enabled. So we kind of give you this blurb at the top to tell you what would happen. And then it just gives you a little preview of that message.
Matt, can you go back to the message body where the C list field was?
Mhm.
I just want to point this out a little bit. The reason why that error is a common one is because sometimes people don't use the table fields on the side. If Matt, if you drop that down, sometimes people just go into the message body or the subject and start typing, which is fine. But the problem with that is we were building that C list below the message based on you guys, users, dragging and dropping the fields from the right-hand side to the left-hand side. So it's a common error because a lot of people like to type, or they like to copy and paste something that already has the field names into them. So that's why we just exposed that C list now. So if you do end up typing the field names or copying and pasting text that already has the field names in there, you just have to make that make sure that C list, or which really is the message subject field list, that has to have a field ID for every field that's dynamic in the message body and subject. So if the field ID isn't in that list, you're going to more than likely get that error that Matt showed you before that said, hey, company name is not in the C list.
Correct.
But we never gave you the ability to change that from here. We had it in our old way that, and Laura's familiar with that, and so is Annette. The old way of configuring this was through a Quickbase application, and we exposed that. But we hadn't done that in the cloud yet, but we just did that, and now just released that this week.
Yep. So
I would like to add one more thing, to the same support question, that a lot of times clients complain about that their Courier configuration is not being executed. If that Courier configuration is a triggered one and you have used an email notification, if you have set up an email notification and Courier is not being triggered, if you don't see an activity here, it means that the Courier configuration was never executed, never triggered. In that case, you should copy yourself in the email notification. So you receive an email notification just to make sure that your email notification criteria is correct. A lot of times the clients do not have the email notification criteria correct. So email notification never gets executed correctly. So you should always copy yourself while you are testing the Courier configuration, like first few times.
It's got to be an open one too.
Yes.
I was going to say, I was like, I wonder why that wasn't happening. But
Yeah, it's not open.
so that's what Manal was just referring to. So you always have to have, I believe it's QB Courier at Quickbase.
QB Courier at courier.quickbasetools.com.
Yeah, so just including your own personal email there will allow you to end up getting what ends up being the custom message at the bottom here, which can be found in the Finish tab under this yellow button. It'll actually give you that custom message as well as that Courier, courier.quickbasetools.com, just to copy and paste to make life easier. You know, I always try to show my clients this. Just paste it right in there. So you'll get this message exactly, which with whatever subject. So being, you know, courier quest. And you'll get this. So if you don't get that it never received to our email address either. So our processor couldn't process it. It's just one way to kind of check yourself.
So if you did get the email, then you should assume we got the email. And then if it's not processing the way you want, you can check your errors like Matt showed. You go to your Courier configuration, click on the pancakes next to the config and see if there's any error messages. And if you don't see any there, then you can raise a support ticket with us and let us know that you did see it trigger, you don't see any error messages, and you're not sure what happened to that one. But once you're done testing, you can always remove yourself from the email notification from Quickbase so that you don't get bombarded with emails from your real live transactions.
Absolutely. All right, Jennifer.
I have a quick question about the table fields when you're setting up the email subject and body. If you change the name of a field in Quickbase, will that update in here, or is it strictly depending on the C list and so it doesn't really matter?
It depends on the C list, so it doesn't matter.
Okay, I mean, that's why when I've been doing Exact Form Plus so far in my templates, I've been using the numbers instead of the names, just because I don't want to mess myself up if I change a field name.
Yep, that's what we recommend you do as well, because your template is not actually connected to your table in Quickbase. So if you change the field name, it's not going to change it in the document template. And that happens a lot because people that have access to be able to change field names, they often do that, and then it'll break the template. So it's always good practice to use the field ID. Sometimes it's not that great when you look at the template itself because you can't tell what field it is. You have to go back and do a little research, but at least it saves the ~6 from coming out when it shouldn't, when you actually want the value to come out when you generate a document.
Yeah, but for Courier, I think the Courier requires you to use the same field names, because Courier, when we process the email, when we try to process the email body message, we read the field name and then match it with C list. So
and that will not update automatically. So if
C list, no, it will not update the field names automatically in the email body message. You have
so
to
I would have to
update
come and change them.
Yes,
Okay.
Yes.
Right.
So just as a quick note, I just had one of our developers contact me. He said he would also like these lines here to be known as the hamburger. So if you see the blue hamburger, please know that that's the configuration activities. So that's the place to go. But I think with that said,
the activities are also available at the configuration level. So you don't always have to go to the list of the Courier configurations to get the activities, right? On each configuration also has it on the right-hand side, the stack. So you should be able to see it. If you click on the Courier configuration, yeah, and then click on view or edit a configuration, right?
Okay, I'm not doing something like that. Okay, yeah.
Right, do you see it on the right-hand side? So you don't have to go back, right?
No, I didn't even know you could do that.
Right, good.
There you go. Well, that's a nice trick as well. See, we're happy we do these because we definitely learn something ourselves every day. So that's great. Any last minute questions? Don't believe so. Well, I appreciate you guys all joining us. Thank you for those who participated. We really appreciate it. There is a survey at the end, so if you guys don't mind staying for another 30 seconds, we appreciate it. And if you could give us answers on recommendations of what you'd like going forward, we'd love that. But for now, enjoy your rest of your Wednesday and have a great rest of your week.